Chatworthy, the narrator of The Curse of Oak Island. And I have a question for you. Could it be that you are listening to The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream?
All right, we are live. And yes, you are listening to The Curse of Oak Island and Beyond live stream. I am your host, Jeff Freeman. And over here we have my co-host, Jack Campbell. And we have our very special guests that we have here today, Steve Guptill and Laird Niven. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We've been waiting for this for quite a long time. I know we put this out about a month ago saying that you guys were going to be on the show with us, and everybody was really looking forward to it. I know I have been too. So we had a lot of questions that were coming today. But as we get started here, I want to kind of take this opportunity to look into your backgrounds a little bit. Not only are we curious about the things you're doing on Oak Island and the things you can share with us, but we're also curious about many of the things that you've done off the island and how you got to be where you are. And I got to say, what a great gig, huh? I mean, here you guys were off in working in Nova Scotia or wherever, and, doing your craft. And then you get an opportunity to go on the island. I mean, that's got to be incredible, right? To be on TV and stuff.
It's certainly changed my life. Yeah.
I'll bet. Yeah, in a big way, hopefully in a positive way, because I know it's a positive thing for all of us. Stephen, I'll start with you, kind of talking about the fact that you were, I guess, with the Nova Scotia Community College. And is that where you basically got your start learning about geometrics, right? Is that how it is?
Geomatics.
I'm sorry. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I have a background before surveying. I did undergrad at Acadia University, which is also here in Nova Scotia. And that's where Dr. Spooner now teaches, or he's a professor there.
Okay. Doing your
and became a surveyor.
And so doing your craft and then
surveying. I did undergrad at Acadia University, which is also here in Nova Scotia. So there's a bit of delay on my end. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but anyway, I'll continue. So I went to COGS in early to 2006, 2007, and I did the same program there. So there's two routes you can take to become a surveyor. You can go to university or you can go to college. And really, in the end, it ends up being the same. If you go to university, you can become a registered land surveyor a bit quicker. A lot of your tests while you're in university. When you go through the college route, a lot of those tests you end up writing while you're actually working in the field.
Okay.
I graduated from NSCC or COGS. So you guys see on the show, see a lot of COGS gear from Doug, myself, and maybe a few others.
Hats and stuff. Yeah, we've seen it quite a bit. Yep.
So Doug and I worked there. So lo and behold, I started at COGS. I went into the industry. I worked out west for a company called Midwest Surveys. You'll see that little patch on my logo on my.
Oh yeah, yes, I have seen it.
So that was my field vest. I worked there for 7 or 8 years. I returned home, which is Nova Scotia. So I went west, so Alberta, Saskatchewan. Returned home. I worked at COGS actually in the surveying department for 4 or 5 years, and got the call from Oak Island season 6, so it'll be 3 years ago, and I sort of stuck. I think I came out to do a couple jobs, and they liked the fact that I was recording data to 1 inch or 2 or 3 centimeters, which was a lot better than recording it with their cell phone.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I just sort of started keeping a digital record of everything, and I got call, and lo and behold, I ended up full time.
Yeah, that's
you have a military background also, don't you?
I do. I wasn't in the military very long, about 3.5 years.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's great. And I was too. I was a Navy man myself. So, and I know that's from a different country, but thank you for your service. That's really good. Appreciate that very much. And I'm sure the country does too. So yeah, that's very interesting. You talked about Dave or Doug being part of that as well. Cause as we've seen the hats, and I know, Nova Scotia Community College, you could tell what that was. I think most people know what that was, but the COGS, I know a lot of people asked about, what does that COGS mean? In the Center for Geographic Sciences, right? That's right. Yep. And that's very interesting. So now you're hired on by the island. So you actually work for Oak Island Tours, I guess is the official name of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say most of the research group, and I'll let Laird speak for himself, were contracted employees of Oak Island Tours. So, we work on and off the island for Oak Island Tours. So I strictly work right now when we're working for Oak Island Tours. So I no longer work for NSCC. I did for the first year. So I did do what Dr. Spooner's doing, and I tried to go back and forth between working at COGS and working on the island, and it's too intense. So
right.
I wanted to commit all my time to one or the other, and the island won. So
Yeah, and we know too that I've heard you talk about before that you spend an awful lot of time during the filming or during the actual time you can be on the island. I guess from April or whenever on that you spend like sun up to sundown just about every day on the island. That's got to be incredibly take. I don't know about weekends, but I know that's got to take up a lot of your time. But then again, it's. I think I would have to think that it's very fun, enjoyable, and very the type of work that really satisfies you, I guess would be the word I'm looking for, right? So let's jump over to Laird. Laird, now getting to where you are, I know that I initially studied at Dalhousie. Is that how it's called? Dalhousie. But you've got your resume, all the different things that you've done is pretty extensive. But you started off there, and I guess you started off with anthropology, right?
Yeah, it was sociology and social anthropology was my degree, and then I got a job in a camera store.
Oh, really?
I was working in a camera store, and in 1983, I decided that I'd just take a course at St. Mary's, and part of that course was they had Stephen Davis, who was the archaeologist at St. Mary's, come in and give a talk one night. And as soon as he gave the talk, I went, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I went back to upgrade my degree at St. Mary's and kind of weaseled my way in with Steve Davis and worked with him for years. So.
Right. So that, like I was saying, you have quite an extensive a resume there of different places you've been. I know we talked about worked many federal and provincial environmental assessments. So you've been all over. Now, what does that include? Like finding foundations and different things like that, or explain it.
Yeah. So the environmental assessments are triggered for things like highway twinning, pipelines, things like that. And part of that is to have the archaeologists come in, and we do they call it an archaeological assessment inventory. So we see what archaeological sites may be impacted by the project,
right?
And we recommend mitigation, which is excavation or whatever.
Right. Well, I know that you're also no stranger to being on TV, because I know looking into this a little bit, I kind of found, I'm going to show this picture here. I found this was about 8 years ago. And it was, you were working out, it says Argyle Street. And I was trying to catch the name of the actual, it was a property or something that
it's the new convention center is what it was. Building the new convention center. So that was built on 2 city blocks. One city block was completely obliterated. But the other one had a whole bunch of building foundations and outhouses and a well and things like that. Yeah.
And this was on the CBC, right? So you were actually on the news and everything. They brought you up here, and I saw this, and then there it is. Look at that. So this was about 8 years ago, was it?
Yeah, it was.
That's awesome.
We found a lot of stuff in that.
No, I actually watched this, and it was a good segment. They were talking, you were giving an explanation about, what you had, what you were finding. You talked about finding the privies on this spot and things of that nature. But it was really cool to see that, because that shows the things you've done that are off the island. And I didn't know if there was there any other special places or things you've done that you could share with us or wanted to share with us?
Well, I spent a lot of time in DeBert. And so that site has Paleo-Indian occupation. So the artifacts from there are about 12 or 13,000 years old.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And that was pretty cool.
I would imagine.
But the project I enjoyed the most and I'm the most proud of is Birchtown. So the Black Loyalist settlement in Birchtown.
Where's that in relation to?
So it's about an hour away. So Samuel Ball went from South Carolina to New York to Shelburne and then to Birchtown. So which is about 6 miles away from Birchtown's about 6 miles away from Shelburne.
Okay.
And it's about an hour away from Oak Island.
Okay. All right.
But it's archaeology that hadn't been done before. And I think I documented 25 Black Loyalist sites in total.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really pretty cool.
And how many years ago was this?
That was a long time ago. So I would have been 98. I think it started.
Was this,
97, 98. Yeah.
was this around the area that he owned also in that area?
No,
Samuel Law?
he didn't own property there. He went from Birchtown to Chester, and that's where he started buying his property. Yeah.
So somewhere around this time, I would say, huh?
A little bit after that.
Oh, was it okay?
This is like 85, I think.
Oh, okay. Where is this from? I saw this picture out there. I had to grab it because here we have the young Laird Niven out there working.
That's my first year of archaeology at the Shubenacadie Canal.
Oh, wow.
Site, which is ironically just about 10 minutes away from here.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is like one of the first ones you'd done?
It is.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, we had a question actually. Let's see. What did we have here? Oh, this one was actually for Stephen. I'm going to jump over to Stephen for a second. Yeah. Stephen, this was a question that came up for you. I'll throw this out there because it kind of leads into what some of the things you wanted to talk about. And this was from Michelle. And Michelle, I'm sorry if I don't say your name correctly here. Thomier, Thomaie, Thomier. It says, Steve, I have a young friend, a 12-year-old gal who loves Oak Island. You came up in the conversation last night. She was curious about what education is required to become a surveyor. And she had, she said, I have no answer for her. What can you help to let her know what is required?
So there's a couple routes. I talked about that actually when I was talking about my past. So you can do two. And you can do the college route. Excuse me. You can do the college route, and it's a 2 to 3 year program. And you go out with a diploma or an advanced diploma as a surveyor geomatic technician, and that's the first. And I would say for every 100 people that become surveyors, 50 would do the college and 50 would do the university. Two is go to university and become an engineer. So you become a geomatics engineer, and that essentially fast tracks you to becoming a legal land surveyor.
Okay.
Surveyor, so you can sign survey plans.
All right.
And it really just fast tracks. So there's two routes. If you want to get in the field quicker, you can make money while you're becoming a land surveyor. You go the college route because college tuition is a little bit cheaper. If you don't, you go to the university for 4 years and you become a geomatic engineer. So that's how you become a surveyor.
Wow. So that's great information. So for that person, and I don't think we had a name, it was just talking about the 12-year-old that was very interested in that. 12-year-old gal says, so there you go. There's your answer about that. And I know you guys are part of our group too. So maybe if somebody wants to ask and get a little more in-depth information about that, it'd be great. They can certainly post that question. And I'm sure you guys would be more than happy to share that. And so we'll jump back over to Laird for a minute. Laird, I've got a couple other pictures that I wanted to show, and maybe you could shed a little light on them.
Sure.
This one, let's see. We've got, we had the one that you were working by you said you called it a canal.
Shubenacadie Canal, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And then there was this one here. Let's see. We'll bring this one up real quick. And you're with a colleague, I guess, there. What's this one all about?
Don Miller. So this was a site in downtown Halifax. Was the site owned by the grandmother of a guy named Samuel Sellon.
Oh, okay.
And we found historical information first. We didn't. Paul Erickson, who was a professor at St. Mary's, did. That the house had burnt down in 1780.
Oh, wow.
So he did a lot of historical research and decided we would do an archaeological project to see if we could find the house. And we found the house with our first couple of pits.
Wow.
And got a lot of beautiful artifacts from in there. And so Don's holding a Chinese porcelain teacup, the top part, and I'm holding a flat iron.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow. I thought it was a rock, but you're right. It is shaped exactly like a flat iron. Wow.
Yeah. And I'm wearing, so this is 1986, and I'm wearing the Monticello t-shirt because I just come back from a field school in Monticello.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really neat. I have one more here too, and then this one kind of goes a little bit away from the archaeology. It kind of jumps into a little bit more about Laird Niven that maybe most people didn't know. And yeah, so here you are. I guess you're part of a soccer team, right?
Yeah, the Basin Insurance soccer team. Yeah.
All right. When was this?
I probably stopped playing 6 or 7 years ago.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Well, my knees didn't like soccer.
Yeah, I kind of know what you mean there. I can.
The older you get, the worse your knees get. I played basketball, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's too bad. I enjoy it. But.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was kind of interesting to see some of the pictures from the past there, and I think that I think I actually had one for Stephen too. Let's see if I can find this picture. And I wasn't, when I looked at it at first, I'm like, I don't know. Are we sure is this Steve Guptill? I said, I don't know, but I'll share this. And if this is not you, I apologize. But boy, that's huh? That's not you? Okay.
No. His hair's too messy.
There's and you know what? There's quite a few Steve Guptills out there too. You know, we're looking at these other. There's another guy. I guess it was has the same name, and you know, generally in the area. So you had to be very careful what you were pulling up there. But yeah, I thought, I don't know. That doesn't really look like him, but maybe. But we know that getting over to the island, we know for sure that this is you right here, and this is that shirt you're talking about, right? Yeah. You're on that patch you're talking about.
Yeah, I've got both. I've got my COGS and my Midwest, so I sort of represent everybody I've worked for.
Yeah, exactly, and that's so cool too, because I know it's like with Laird wearing the hat we see you wearing on the island all the time. That people ask all the time about it. You know, and it's that represents the soccer team or football, I guess it would be called, right? Yeah. The team, the hat you wear quite often, and you've got a couple different ones that switch from time to time. I see too.
I do. I have a few.
And you've got one
just behind me.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, oh, it's looking a little worn. Yeah.
That's season 4 and 5, I think.
The Oak Island hat.
Yeah, that's what we see on Oak Island all the time. Exactly. That's really cool. So, and Steve, you've been having a lot of fun in your off season. You know, you guys get to finally get away from the island when filming is done for the season. You get to go and do some other things. You've been skiing a lot lately, right? Yeah,
I ski a couple times a week. I have a lot of fun. Spooner and I have picked that up and skiing for years, but we've known each other now the last couple of years, and for Laird's bad knees, I'm sure he would join us. So.
Yeah,
in the lodge.
Yeah, that's got to be. And I like to ski too. Now out here, and I live in Western Pennsylvania, and there are a few ski hills around we got in this area, but it's nothing like. I skied a little bit in Southern California, going up to Big Bear area skiing, and Tahoe also. And I tell you, that's I don't know about you, but I'm a very low level skier. So when it comes to I remember a trip I took one time, and I went up these lifts, and I got all the way up. I thought, I'm going to go up and check this out. Well, come to find out that when you get up to the top of the mountain, there's only one way to come down. You don't get back on the lift to come down. If you don't like what you see, too bad. You're kind of stuck. And so the first hill I went over, and I looked down the edge, and I thought, and then I looked over the sign. It was like Black Diamond or something. I'm like, okay, this is not where I'm supposed to be. So unfortunately, I said, this is going to be, it's going to be the end of me right here. So I ended up finding there was another trail that kind of meandered its way around. It was a little bit more safe to take. So, but are you a pretty good skier? You've been doing this a while, you said, or you just picked it up recently?
No, I've been skiing since I was probably about 12.
So. Oh, okay. That's cool.
It's funny. I don't like winter at all, but my sports are hockey and ball, I do play ball, but hockey and skiing are my big sports, and
the Canadian sports.
I suppose I picked them up because I hate winter, so I need something to do while it's cold out. So
Steve has a huge duffel bag full of winter clothes that he puts on.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you look at the spoils table, we go back to last year. Jack and I don't exaggerate when I say I'd have about 12 layers on. I looked like I was about 400 pounds.
I think I might actually have a picture of that. We might be showing some of that here in a little bit. We also had another question, and this one was for Laird. It said, discovery, and again, this kind of goes back to things off the island, but it was from Michelle again, and she said, Laird, discovery is not limited only to the island itself. And again, you might have already touched on this a bit, but it said, has there been any study of the surrounding areas in the island that support your findings on the island?
That's a question I get a lot.
Yeah.
And, no, there hasn't been. There's been no work, as far as I know, in the immediate area and on the islands around the immediate area. I mean, one island, is it Apple Island? I don't think we can get on Apple Island.
Is that the one just like north or northwest or northeast of the
northeast?
Yeah.
There was one island you were on just for a very short time, and I
That was-
cannot remember the name of it.
That was Hook. That was Jack
okay.
and
Yeah.
Gary, I think. Yeah, I haven't been on any of the adjacent islands.
Mhm.
Now, are they privately owned, so
Yeah.
you can't get on?
Yeah, you need permission. Yeah, but we're interested. We know Samuel Ball owned 100 acres off island. So it's kind of a project that may come up in the future. You never know. It's a
Interesting.
great idea.
Yeah, for sure. So, Stephen, you originally came out when you first came to the island. You basically came out. You were asked to be, look for Chef 6. Was that correct initially?
Yep.
Okay. Can you talk about that a little bit and that exploration? Because now, obviously, you come out there with your, we call it the staff of, and again, this kind of goes back to Deidre and Emma on could it be Oak Island, but the staff that you carry with you, the staff of truth, because it narrows down exactly, within just an inch. Yeah. So that's a little bit more precise than some of the other stuff that the people use. And that's really why they brought you out to the island. So talk about Shaft 6 and that, if you would, just a little bit.
Sure. So originally in season 6, I was hired to do two things. And one was to find Shaft 6. So what I was supposed to do was take all the data that we had collected, or they had collected previous to me, and compile it in a database. So essentially what I did is I took everything that anybody has done, especially since the Laguna started, and I put it in AutoCAD. So I created a database. I took essentially Terry's grid and I expanded it, and continued to build on it. And then I would take the data that was supplied. So they'd hire companies to come out and collect data, or Terry would collect data by doing offsets with hand notes. And truth be told, Terry did a really good job, because when I corrected it with my survey gear, he wasn't off a whole lot.
Really? Yeah.
So just by doing offsets, Terry did a pretty good job, like doing an offset from this tree and an offset from this monument. They did a pretty good job of placing a lot of those holes. So I was hired to find Shaft 6. So I based the information that I was given on top of correcting some of the positions of the drill holes to find Shaft 6. And I based a lot of that on historical information and wood finds.
Wow.
So if you go back a couple seasons, 2 or 3 seasons, you can see my first war room where I do the presentation. And that was just based off of evidence that we had at the time. Now, as the season progressed into season 7, so as season 6 rolls into season 7, we learned that wasn't actually Shaft 6. What we had based the information on was the Halifax tunnel. So based on the wood hits, and as we continued the drill program, it turns out what we had thought was Shaft 6 was the Halifax tunnel, which was okay, because it gave us a position on the Halifax tunnel, because we have data on the Halifax tunnel. And as season 7 rolls in, if you remember, season 7 in our drill program was the search for shafts. So a lot of the money pit program, or all of almost our resources in the money pit, were based on finding shafts, because with shafts and historical data, we can find the money pit.
Right. And that's what's really so ultimately important. And I know that that's something that, as we're watching in season 8 right now, and even Marty says, I'm tired of seeing wood, but, really that wood is so important, because it tells a story, and it also lets you narrow down, or try to basically narrow down, what shaft you are finding. And I know right now, they're talking about and I had it written down, and I forgot. Pardon me?
Tupper? Is it Tupper?
Yeah, the Tupper Shaft, or Tupper Shaft. Tupper Shaft. Yeah. And that's so important, because they know it's like 10 feet away from the original money pit. So finding it is so vitally important. But and I guess you work a lot with Craig Tester, right? And now Craig, we know, is the data man. He seems like the guy who is collecting data so much and compiling this all together. So you two really work close together. Is that correct?
That's right. So the money pit program is really, it's driven, the people involved. I would say Craig probably leads it. So Terry, obviously, Charles, myself, Doug, and Scott. Anybody else I'm missing there, Laird? Rick's involved with everything.
Yeah, right, Rick. Yeah.
Was Dan Heskey help some of that, the money pit there?
Dan Hensky was a huge help in season 7. He Dan Hensky is over 80 now, and he was on the island this year, but not as much as he has been because of COVID. So we had to restrict.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right.
Himself because of COVID. So we get to see as much as Dan as we would like, because Dan's essentially a walking encyclopedia of Oak Island. So anything that we have hunted for, we really need to learn to go ask Dan first, and Laird can contest to this because Dan just takes us there. So
wait, he's a GPS, right?
yeah, Shaft 9, we found it because Dan stood on top of it. I in season 6. So the second job I was hired for, let's go back a couple years, was to record all of the information in Dan's head. So I walked around with Dan and just recorded everything. And one of the things got brought up in season 7. Well, we need to find Shaft 9. And I said, well, that rings a bell. I remember surveying that with Dan. And sure enough, I took them back and I said, well, this is where Dan took me. And we dug a hole and there was Shaft 9. So
I think what I found was with the coconut fiber. This is what got me. He was able to go right to the.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, he walked right out there in the.
And I could walk right to a spot, and here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, you kind of broke up there for a second. I don't know if we had a little internet lag there, but yeah, that's exactly right because he walked right out there in the
water.
Yeah, he walked right out there and said, it should be right in this area. And they started digging, and sure enough, they came up with a coconut fiber. So that man, what a wealth of knowledge that he had, with things. And even talking about they were talking about the Serpent Mound that we know, well, at least as far as we've seen so far in the episodes in season 8 here, we know it's just a spoils pile, I guess. Aaron Taylor's been out there working with that quite a bit. And I think Laird's been out there too. But that's, I guess, just a spoils pile. But, they asked him initially about that. And he said, no, this was not something that we put here. It was here, long ago. So just the wealth of knowledge that man carries is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We were in a meeting one night. It was in the research center. I remember it was Laird that spoke up. Has anybody, we've been searching for years. Has anybody asked Dan just to go stand in a spot and say, that was you, right, Laird?
Yeah.
He's like, why don't we just tell Dan to go stand in a spot? And this is big.
Yep. Yeah. That's incredible. And that's some of the things, now we've lost, Dan Blankenship and Fred Nolan, of course. And what resources those men, and I think, I think Laird, when you first came out to the island, you were actually hired by Dan. Was that true?
I was hired by Dan, and then I was hired by Fred.
Okay.
Yeah. And Fred wasn't allowed on the island. He was allowed across the causeway. Mm-hmm. Of course, he had his museum just at the head of the causeway.
Right.
But then we had to walk along the high water mark to Center Road, and then we could walk to his property. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you actually
the feud was that bitter at that time for a long time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you were right in the middle of that. I mean, you were there while that was happening. So you originally worked for Dan, but then with Fred. So you were, what was that like? I mean,
I thought neither of them would die just to spite each other. They did, things got a little better later on, but it was an awkward situation for sure.
Yeah, I bet it was. And, and that was something that we talked about too, is that the fact that, boy, if those two could have worked together better, what could they have accomplished? It's just amazing that it was missed, in my opinion. So much of that collaboration between them was missed.
Well, I know Dan liked to play things close to his heart, and there were a lot of things he didn't tell people. I think we're finding that out, right, Steve?
Yeah,
a lot of things Dan knew, and
wasn't Fred the same way, kind of too? I mean, you didn't get to know Fred the way you knew Dan because you didn't have as long a period of time.
Yeah,
right. to get a trust issue going.
Yeah, they're treasure hunters. So Gary's the same way. When you meet Gary initially, if you ask him questions about specific things, you're not going to get a straight answer, right? Until he really gets to know you, and they're the same way. Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah. So, and then with you coming on the island, Steve, with your. Have you? I would imagine you've seen, many or maybe some of Fred's survey maps because you've become the new Fred on the island in a manner of speaking, because now you're kind of picking up where he left off. So, have you seen many of his survey? Are they called charts or maps? Many of his surveys,
survey plans. So, I mean, I can't speak too much of this because I don't know what's going to air and what hasn't aired. Okay. But the plans that you've seen are aired in previous seasons. I've used those and been a part of those in our seasons or my seasons. So, I mean, surveying information gets handed down. Most of it gets signed and it becomes legal, and a lot of it becomes public knowledge. And some of Fred's is, and some of Fred's isn't. So what I do on that is, you know, I'm a surveyor. He was a surveyor. I have been granted, luckily, access to a lot of, not all, but a lot of Fred's information. And I can say to what Jack said a second ago, Fred was really good at what he did. He surveyed with high precision, which we do. I mean, it's legal. Everything we do is legal. We can be sued if we don't do it right. And we do multiple checks. But Fred also played things close to his chest. And he you know, we find things where he found things, but he didn't label them. So he knew what he'd found. And then we have to do the investigation. So, you know, I go back and I say, okay, we found this here. And I go back and I look on one of Fred's plans and he found it too, but he didn't. So he found something, we found something, but he didn't give the information of what it was. So, but you can't blame him for that. I mean, he knew what it was. And I mean, he's a treasure hunter. You don't want to give away your secrets if you're a treasure hunter.
Exactly right. Yeah, that's very interesting because, you know, and that would be, you know, we've seen, you know, when you know, in past seasons, you know, when they were showing some of this to Rick, and they rolled out like some of these maps they had laid out on the table in there. And my goodness, I mean, to me, it's like, where's the actual map? Where's the island on here? Because it's just covered in lines. And of course, I'm not a surveyor. I don't understand all that. I mean, I understand that they're using these lines to mark certain things, but my goodness, I mean, do you normally see maps that detailed with that much stuff on them, or was he a little overzealous on that? Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, he put everything on it. I mean, there's so much going on in the island. So difference between how Fred surveys and I survey. He would have used a transit, or as he was going out a total station. And Laird's familiar because Laird and I have a total station on the island, but we don't use it a ton. Most of my surveying is done with my GPS. Okay. Not a GPS. So with a total station, you have to tie something to a control point. So those lines are tie lines that are tying it back to a control point. Okay. It's where I don't need those. Mine is tied to essentially satellites. So it has coordinates. It has 3D coordinates, like a northing and easting and elevation, like a long and elevation. And it sits in the world where it sits. So if I survey something, it has a 3D coordinate. So I don't have to put a tie line to it because it's in the database stored in a 3D coordinate. So you can do away with a lot of the background noise. I would say our plans, the plans that we build in the research center, are just as detailed, but it doesn't look as messy because I don't have to tie it back to stuff. Right. So Fred's plans, they're legal. You know, they were done by a legal land surveyor, and he surveyed everything. He kept a very detailed record of everything that he did, but he has to. There's so much going on that island, you have to keep a record, and it's especially as you build it over the years. The database is so huge that he needs multiple plans and multiple records. So what he's done isn't abnormal, but you don't see it every day. Right. So yeah, and then like I said, me looking at it as a person who doesn't, I mean, I kind of have a vague understanding of surveying. I know what it's about, but all the details in it, I have no idea. And just looking at those maps, and I thought, my goodness, how do you make any heads or tails of this? And obviously you would understand that stuff. And I was wondering about that because there's so much. And like you said, some that he's shared and some that you haven't seen. And I know that, and it's so grateful that, now that, with Dan Blankenship and Fred being gone, and it's a shame because there's so much knowledge in both of them. But now their sons working together with Dave. Now we know that Dave is retired, and honestly, I got to say that too. And I'll just interject this real quick, that the drilling down episode that was just on here a couple weeks ago with Dave Blankenship talking about Dan and himself and the things that he's gone through. That was one of the best. I think that was one of the best episodes that's been on the entire season. We really got to see a great look at that, and we're going to miss Dave on the island, having him around. And I'm sure, and I'm going to ask you both, if you don't mind, to kind of share a little experience that you have with Dave Blankenship and how anything memorable that you can think of. We'll start with you, Stephen, if you have something that you'd like to share about Dan or Dan Blankenship. Dave? Both, actually. Did you were there? Did you get to meet him? Really? I met Dan a couple of times. My story with Dan is short and sweet. I met him the first time. I was actually with Dave when I met Dan. Okay. Summer out there. So it was probably my second day on the island. So we'll go back to 6. And I was sitting out on right beside where our museum is. We have like a little break table out there. Yeah. You've seen it. Yeah. Sitting with Dave. and I don't remember what we were talking about, but Dan came over in a golf cart, and he came over, and the first thing out of his mouth was, like, who the F are you? And, and Dave said, oh no, are you an theorist? That's what he said.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he laughed, right? He carried on because he was joking, but he wanted to see. And Dave laughed and he goes, no, this is Steve. This is our new surveyor. Anyways, he shook my hand and welcomed me to the island. And he was, super gracious and friendly. And but even at 94, he would have been 93 or 94 at that point. I think he died at 95. So probably 93. I mean, he had a strong handshake and a big smile, and he was carrying on. And he welcomed me to the island, and he was great. So that was my first time. I only met him one time after that, and it was just, hi, Steve, type of thing, or just sort of nodded his head.
Right. Yeah. So how about Dave? So what was your experience with Dave? I mean, you got to work
I mean, I work with Dave a lot because in season 7, he was in the money pit a lot. And I guess, every war room, Dave's in most war rooms. So war rooms. I mean, Dave he lightens the mood. You never know what he's going to say. And he doesn't
hold back.
He doesn't hold, but you know what? He makes everybody laugh. So, it could be a serious war room and Dave will just lighten the mood because he'll just say something completely out in left field, but it will make you think. And it's often very relevant that somebody else hasn't thought about. And it changed the whole path of a war room based on one comment that Dave makes, because so focused and everybody's so focusing on the data or the history. And Dave will just say, get over it and let's think about this. And he makes a lot of sense. So you miss the boldness of Dave. And I would say that's what I miss. The boldness and the lightheartedness of Dave.
Yeah. Yeah. We really, and like I said, we're really going to miss him. And I think that, he'll be back at some point and we'll see him around the island at some point, hopefully in the future. But, and he deserves to take a break and kind of step away from it, for sure. Yeah. He's been on that island for such a long, long time, with and after his father too. So, but how about you, Laird? Do you have some, now your experience with Dan goes back even further, obviously, because we've talked, you were hired by him. How about what were your thoughts on that?
I was hired by him. I think we worked for 3 days on the island, just doing a survey, walking around. We did a little testing at the ball site. And then as we were leaving, I went up, I think he was on his lawn tractor, and I said, okay, we're all done. We're going to leave now. And he said, oh, geez, I thought you were going to be here for a lot longer. And I thought, damn, I just lost a bunch of work. Anyway. And then my other memory of Dan is he was always great in the war rooms. Just sharp as a tack. Yep. Except the one war room where he kept calling Gary Jerry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. We gave Gary a pretty hard time about that. Just
the one thing I remember about Dan was that you would always get on Marty. Marty is always a pessimist of your group, it seems like.
Yeah.
And he would look at Marty and goes, you have to follow the evidence.
Yeah.
It's the evidence. And there was more than one time he would just bring everything back together. You're going too far out, bring it back to what you know.
Right.
And 2 years ago when they did the bump out, they did a 50-foot bump out.
Right. Yep.
I think the previous year, when Dan saw the cofferdam, he said you should have put it 50 feet further.
Yep.
So he
was so right.
Yep, and he was right.
Yeah, he was. He was absolutely right. Yeah, that was kind of neat because we got obviously when that happened, then we got the opportunity to see the slipway, and of course this U-shaped structure, and then we saw that other structure that was basically like two boxes, and and the one wall of it actually collapsed while Jack was in there working. And there was one of the members had put up a picture, and I think he wanted to ask the question. I don't know that I have it, but there was some other. He had a picture of some other structures that looked similar to that he talked about in Newfoundland. That was some sort of a box of logs stacked up, making boxes like that. Are you familiar with?
That's a traditional way to make a pier or a wharf here.
All right.
You do that and then fill it full of rocks.
Okay.
But this one wasn't, because it was covered in tar paper. This one wasn't one of those. There were some rocks in there, but not a whole bunch. And I missed kind of the end of the excavation for that one. So I'm not sure what I concluded it was.
were you surprised that everything that you took out of Smith Cove, you found so many things, so many things you'd never been found before, but you really didn't find any artifacts.
No, and that drove Gary and I crazy. It just didn't make sense that there's so much activity and so few artifacts. And that's what my profession's driven by artifacts. So I don't have any artifacts. There's not much I can say.
Yeah, and I know I made the mistake the last time you and I got to speak on a show like this. I actually made the mistake of asking you, what was your theory? What do you think happened there? And you're like, yeah, I don't get into theories.
Well, that's where the Dan's follow the evidence mantra always comes into play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, you got to follow the actual artifacts, and I guess that and that goes back. I know Jack and I were talking about this earlier. That goes back to the beginning before you were even on the island. I guess the word was put out that they were looking. Dan, maybe I guess, was looking for an archaeologist on the island or something, and nobody wanted to apply because it was a treasure hunt. Is that?
Yeah, archaeologists don't want anything to do. Well, they didn't want anything to do with the islands because that's what they associated with. But I mean, we work under permit, right? We're not treasure hunters. We're just there as support and protection. We're protecting heritage, making sure.
Yep. Now, did that change once the Laginas took over a lot?
That integrity of wanting to save things.
It is changing. Yes. Yeah, it's evolved since I came on the show on the island. They understand that they're frustrated by how slow it takes us to do things at times, but they appreciate the evidence that we can uncover.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So we're working together. I know Gary wasn't happy when I first came on the show and we were walking to lot 24. Apparently he was not very happy at all, but when I let him just do his thing, he thought everything would be all right.
Now, I read somewhere where you had to get a special permit that he could do it as long as he didn't dig anything up or something like that. That's why there's always somebody with him.
Yeah, I had to be there. That's the same case today. Yeah. So he could dig it up as long as there's a permit on the west side of the island.
Yeah, that was something that we talked about before, because everything from the money pit or the edge of the swamp to the west has to be permitted, but everything from there over does not. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that has to do with basically we call Dunfield the Destroyer. Yeah, because he came in and dug that big hole, basically obliterated so much of the artifacts and the things that were there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that was
has written that side off.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a bummer, and that's something that we've talked about that before on the show. That now the Laginas are out there, and we believe in their integrity. I've had, I talk to people about Oak Island, friends of mine or whatever, family members, and they're like, oh, that's a bunch of hooey. And, they're talking about, oh, it's possible. Don't you think they're planting things? And I'm like, no. I really honestly never would believe that Rick and Marty would allow that, for one thing, nor would anybody else, come up with something. They're like, well, yeah, but look, you see Gary, he's over there, and then you see him reach down in the hole. How do you know he didn't pull that out of his pocket? I'm going, he's not going to do that. Well, how do you know? I just know.
Yeah.
It's just, and the fact that the show's not scripted. What's your take on that? I mean, did you agree, obviously,
that it's not scripted?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to pull those kind of shenanigans.
No,
we lose our job. I think to expand on that, we're all professionals outside of Oak Island. You would cost your career if you did something like that.
Exactly.
I have a question for both of you on the new dig that you guys are doing here in the money pit. Steve, did you work with him to make up that map so when he came on the island, you were ready to go and you made in contact to help do that?
On which map, sorry?
The new one for when Craig came on, he had the new area to drill in.
Oh yeah. So those are the new maps that I now make, but they're a collaboration of the Money Pit group, really. So what I did is when I started, I took all of Terry's notes and all the notes under the Lagina, and I built a data set. So what you're seeing there would have been Terry's plan, and that's probably 2016, 2017, because I was in 2018.
Yep.
So I've taken that and expanded it, and I put that in AutoCAD. So now it's in a real world coordinate system. So it's coordinates attached to it. So I've taken what you see there and expanded it, or really put it into a reliable data set. Not that it wasn't reliable, but a backed up data set. So everything now gets recorded that we do, and everything gets recorded in 3D. So we have a couple programs that we run in the Money Pit. So everything that you see Craig bring to the Money Pit, or Terry, or myself, or Scott, it all comes from AutoCAD. I actually have it open here, so any questions you ask me, I can look.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that's something too, is that I'm really amazed by, we know that, just working with well drillers, coming out and drilling a well, that those things walk. They don't go straight down all the time. They do walk. And initially, when we were looking at some of those maps that Craig and you were showing on the show, you see this like a slinky line going off to the side. That's the walk, correct?
That is. So I can talk very little about that because they did air it in season 6. So, I can't talk about it much, but I can talk about it really little. So there's a surveying technique that we use. If you go back to season 6, you'll see it. How it's done. I can't talk about who does it because that hasn't aired, but every hole gets a 3D survey. So I go in, I survey the hole to begin with, they drill it, and then it gets resurveyed again. And it's taking the 3D drift of the drill hole itself, because we need to know where that hole went to base the evidence that we find. So we find wood at 150 feet. We based OC1 at finding wood at 1706 at 149 feet. We know where that is based on this survey that we can do to each drill hole. So that's as much as I can say, because that's what aired a few years ago. But we have a very reliable way of surveying each hole when it's done.
Laird, since there's a new area that's been done, and I think I remember Craig saying you were on virgin land because you were outside the Duncan area. Now, do you have to have an archaeologist there?
No, not on that side of the island.
Okay, I didn't know, because since it was never been drilled, that's from what I understood.
Yeah, the agreement is, if they find anything they think is undisturbed and significant, they would contact me and I would go look at it and evaluate it. And then the decision to get a permit would be at that point.
Okay.
Yep. I know that there was somebody, we had somebody that I would probably say, Steve, that probably one of your biggest fans. And this person was a little upset, but wanted to know, this naming system. I kind of figured you might know who this is that was talking about we had the OC1, we had the RF1, we had the, all the different names. And then all of a sudden, this other naming group. And this person was a little, didn't like it too much, but I guess we're looking at the across the top, we're looking at a chart. You can imagine who that was?
I know who it is. So the naming of the chart it's changed a little bit, and it has to do with a lot of our input. It's just not my input. It's it's not Craig, Rick. We all come up with a naming system. I don't think any of us love the new naming system, but it's what we've put together and agreed on.
Right.
The Money Pit, the new Money Pit grid that I've designed a couple years ago is north, south is A to Z or A to Z, depending on which country you're in.
Yeah, right. Yep.
East to west, it's 1 to 25. So if we're drilling in D14, A, B, C, D, 14, you're over here. And so when we get into, because we've done so many drill holes, so when you get into the foot, you're looking at like 8.25, 9.75. So it doesn't fall on the actual grid lines.
Right.
In a little tiny circle within the grid, multiple grid lines. So we've done so much drilling that we're now drilling in these little fine areas on the Money Pit grid. And to keep the naming straight, we have to work with what we're doing. So we just can't call that, A14 or A9. We have to call it 8.25 because we're A and 0.25 of 5 feet and 9.75, which is 9. So between 9 and 10, it's 5 feet. So between 10 and 11 on the grid, it's 5 feet. Every grid section is 5 feet. So your 0.75 is 0.75 of 5 feet. So it gets confusing, but it works for us. So the people who who put this together, the research group, we understand it, and we understand it can be very confusing. And we hear it a lot, even on the island. The guys are like, the money pit program is messed. And Scott will say, it makes sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, and really, at the end of the day, it needs to make sense to us because we're the ones that put the data together. And the best we can do is, in a war room or in a situation like this, is try to explain why we do it. Even though it's messy and confusing,
right,
at the end of the day, it makes sense to us.
Yep. And I know that Deidre, I mean, the person, this member of yours that likes, this, she loves, I think her favorite one is F.25 by 9.75. I think that's her favorite one, actually. And I heard that there was a possibly going to start a petition or something to get it changed back to the way. Oh yeah. So we love her to death, but yeah, and that's the thing about this chart that I have. And this actually, purchased from the island for me by Linda, our admin. Linda Simpson got this for me, and it's very, I know it's hard to see with the camera here, but again, you've got your numbers going across the top, and then you've got your letters going down the side. So, and I know that right now in season 8, you guys are working up in this area here, and this is kind of what Jack was just talking about, the fact that there is, you hit virgin ground. Now this has been aired, so I'll go ahead and speak of it, but there has been virgin ground found. And also what looks to be, and I don't expect you to elaborate on this because it kind of stopped there. We don't know where it goes from there, but what looks to be hitting at least one wall of the Tupper Shaft. That's what's been aired so far, because they came out with a chunk. I think it was, what was it, Jack? Like 18. There was a section of 18, right, 24 to 20. There was like 3
sections. 24 from 24 to 28 feet when they hit solid wood, almost solid wood coming through.
Yeah, the whole section was wood, which looks like they may have went down the side of one of the walls, I'm assuming. That's what they think so anyway. But again, this goes back to being able to, now if they can go back, and Craig talked about this, being able to move over, and this is where you come into play, I would assume, to move over and be able to say, okay, we're going to go here and look see if we can hit the east wall, and then the west wall, and then the north wall, if that's assuming that they were in the south wall to begin with. But you got to move around to try to find those. And if you do find those, now you can say, yes, this is the Tupper Shaft, because am I right in assuming that this is in an area where no one really has looked before, correct? No searchers that we know of have been looking in this area other than the Tupper Shaft.
Other than the Tupper, yeah, other than people who built that shaft.
Right.
There's lots of evidence out there to suggest everybody places these shafts all over. So, but we can't use historic records because a lot of them are just hand sketched to where they think they are.
Right.
Themselves. So this Tupper pit or Tupper Shaft is just as important as, say, Shaft 2, because we have information to support.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to last year, you remember how successful we were determining the orientation of Shaft 2 through the drill program? We're going to do the same thing. So having a lot of wood on one hit, 10, 20 feet is fantastic because it shows that we're on a wall. And
right.
We know that if we have 20 feet of wood or 18 feet of wood, and we get that a few times through the course of that drill, we're on a wall. So it helps us determine where to go. And we can often be quite successful and say we need 7 drill holes, and on those 7, 5 of them hit. Those 5, that's a successful drill, because even the ones we don't hit on, we know there's nothing there, and that's important. So the ones where we don't find anything also help us build those shafts and those tunnels in 3D. So they help us get an understanding of what's around. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and being able to get to the bottom of it too. Like I know they were talking about it in the, finding the Tupper Shaft, if it is in fact a Tupper Shaft. Well, it looks like it may be, but also going down and finding the bottom of it, because I know they were talking about the Tupper Shaft being the one that was drilled or dug next to 10 feet away from northwest. I think it was northwest of the actual money pit back then. And then they went down, and then they tried to come over horizontally and to try to come up into the money pit that way. And then again, they hit water and it flooded all that out, and then they weren't able to continue. But again, by narrowing that down and knowing where that shaft is, now you can say, okay, I guess it would be southeast of this point is going to be the money pit. And that's what is key, is to finding it. And it kind of looks like most of the searchers have simply missed it. Like, and looking at the map, again, that map that I have over there, you're looking in an area that's outside of the Dunfield Big Dig. And then you're also looking outside of the Heddon Shaft, north of the Heddon Shaft. So this is an area where you want to be able to find that wood. And again, Marty always says, oh, here we are finding more wood, but it is important in this respect to find that.
Yeah, very important. Charles says this a lot in the Money Pit, and I don't know if it airs, but no evidence is good evidence, because it goes where there's nothing. And some of the, when we find nothing, it can lead to the next search quicker than finding something. We can rule out an area.
Yeah.
So when we're defining or when we're chasing something in the Money Pit, so right now, where we're airing, we're chasing this Tupper Shaft.
Right.
Well, when we miss, we know there's nothing there. So defining everything in 3D space has really been able to help us pinpoint our next location. And we can take those drill holes, because we're limited to so many drill holes because we only get so much time with the drill rig.
Yeah, I would imagine. Right.
And so we've got it down to really a fine science that our program works really well. It's really intensive. It happens quick. We're on top of the data, happens quick. It's all big, just bang, 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 bang. We have a system. It works really well, but it doesn't stop. That drill runs for 12 hours a day. And,
I can imagine, yeah.
And you've got a timeline limit because of COVID. You've got to start on everything also.
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, because of COVID this year, it made things a bit more difficult. But once we got into our Oak Island bubble, it just worked as usual. So, but what you guys see is it's the same thing. So lots of wood is good for me because it helps me determine where that thing is in 3D space, and it helps us decide where we want to move the rig to. So.
Right. And then the fact that I think it was I have my notes from the other shows that we do, but when you guys found that little piece of square nail, the end of it, and then this was just on the show last
week, if I remember correctly.
Tuesday, right. So they found a little piece of nail. It was actually looked at by Christy, looked at it. And then it was determined that it was dated somewhere, she said, post 1810, I think, or something like that. I think I forget my date.
1840. I think it was 1840.
Right. Post 1840.
Post 1840 was the Tupper Shaft, maybe.
Right. So that would lead another answer to be that is possibly the Tupper Shaft, is what it looks like. I know you're smiling there, so you can't really elaborate on it, but it so all those little pieces, even though it's just a nail, everybody wants to see gold. I'm only going to bring up some gold. We want to see gold. But all those little pieces are telling a story, and that little piece of nail is telling a story. So it's important.
Laird, I got a question for you.
Yep.
When we started in, the swamp was kind of a taboo. You weren't going to go there, or Murray didn't want to go there. Definitely, we know that right now.
Yeah.
You're in your second year, I believe, really with the swamp. Are you really? I am amazed by what you found in 2 years out there. I'd like to know what you think about that.
No, I think it is amazing. I mean, that's all on Ian Spooner, right? Those are all Spooner discoveries. The Stone Road, I don't think was happening if Spooner didn't get out there with a probe and a boat and just find it by hand. It's really amazing what is in the swamp. And I know that's Fred's baby, right?
Yep.
Thought everything was in the swamp, and right now it's certainly looking like something happened in the swamp. We just have to find out who and when.
Right. And that's what's so interesting about that, because and again, it goes back to, we saw at the very beginning of the season where Tony Sampson was pushing Dr. Spooner around in the inflatable boat.
Yeah.
And he was running some scans over the area. And that led to him going out with Rick in the inflatable boat. And like you just said, putting that shaft down there and hitting all these rocks. And he's like, and it was so weird because, of course, and again, because it's TV, we only see a small, a couple minute segment on that particular thing when they were probably out there for hours.
Yeah.
But he was able to determine that this stone roadway, while it was still filled with water, was about 20 feet wide and about 70 foot long, which it turns out to be pretty much exactly that size.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, if it hadn't have been for him, defining this, you probably wouldn't have drained and started digging over there in the first place.
No, I mean, he knew it shouldn't be there. Right. In that environment, he shouldn't be finding that. So
right.
It's really all of those discoveries are on Ian Spooner.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And I have a question about the uplands. On a show, I believe it was last week, you were in the swamp, and it looked like the road turned and it went toward the upland. if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Now, are there two uplands? Because I can remember Smith's Cove at the end of last year. I think it was the last show. You dug a hole, and they were calling that the uplands
Oh,
also.
the uplands, yeah.
Now,
Well,
are there two uplands? Are they the same thing? Or
they both meet at some point, right?
Mhm.
I think it's just coming up from the water is what
Right.
you're referring to.
okay, 'cause, I mean, I remember that because Steve was there. Well, Steve was in the water, and then they went up to the uplands there about the first show of the year because they were doing some measurements with Charles, I think, on the first show of the year, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he ended up on the uplands and calling Rick and Marty there, if I remember correctly.
I think it's basically with a small U, right? We just say uplands.
Yeah. So we know, and speaking of this, this kind of segues us right into this section here, and this is looking at the Behringer map, I guess, or Behringer survey. Survey, thank you. So the Behringer survey, which we seen where you and you, Stephen, and was it Doug? I think went out and you guys were doing some surveying in this area, and you were looking for these 4 red dots here. And of course went out and did some there you are.
That's what I was talking about there.
There you are. I had to get a little deeper than what your boots were ready for. So
that was where the cross was found, wasn't it, Steve? If I remember it.
There was one of the locations that I surveyed is within a few feet of where the cross was found.
How it's what a coincidence, right? I mean, that would be right there. That's just weird. And then, of course, there, I got to showing Gary, of course, and Rick, finding the cross there, which I think most people would probably say that's one of the most significant finds that have been on the island to date, that we know of anyway. But then, of course, you guys were, now this was really interesting to me because as you guys were putting this stake in here and then you were looking at it, this particular stake ended up being, I guess it was explained to be so close to the point by which Billy Gerhardt was on top of it with his excavator and digging down into that big hole. Isn't that right? Right in this area?
Yeah. So last year, Billy would have been sitting on that spot to dig our 50+ foot hole. If you remember, we hit the wood and we couldn't really decide if it was a tunnel or a shaft at 52 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I can remember Marty went down and looked into it, and it goes that way. That's all I can remember him saying.
Yeah, it goes that way, he said, when he got down. And then Rick, of course, got in the bucket, which that'd have been me. I'd have been in that bucket in a heartbeat. Get me down in that hole. I want to get a good look at this. So, but this was, and again, like I said, you mentioned that this would have been right where Billy was actually sitting on. So they were that close to where this marking, and this a metals, they thought there was precious metals down here underneath this.
So that would have been one of the non-ferrous targets. So on the Behringer survey, there was 4 non-ferrous targets, and that was determined from a BLF survey from, if I remember, 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see them there. So that would have been that one right there.
Yep. Okay.
This was found in Dan Blankenship's basement, correct? If I remember correctly.
That was found in Dan's basement by Doug.
Wow. Yep.
So I took that. It was surveyed, so I had some control points, and I could reference those control points. So laying out these potential tunnels and potentially non-ferrous targets was rather easy because it was a professional survey. So I just used the survey, used their control points, and corrected it to our coordinate system, and lo and behold, you see where the tunnels go and the potential non-ferrous targets go, or at, I guess, not go. But.
Right. And hopefully we'll get to see more on this because we didn't, there hasn't really been anything else talked about these particular points this season or in season 8 that we're watching so far. But hopefully, and again, that happens so often to us, watching the show, that something will come up like this, something that we think is important, but then we never hear about it again. So we have to assume at that point, well, maybe it wasn't so important after all. But again, I'm very curious to see where this leads to. And that hole that you guys had dug, going down about 52 feet and finding that wood structure, I am totally fascinated by that.
Oh.
It was suggested on the show that it might have been one of the flood tunnels, the legendary flood tunnels, as Robert Clotworthy calls it, the legendary flood tunnels. But we really don't have an answer on that yet. And I don't know, is that something you can speak on or no at this point?
Laird?
I was on the ball site by about that time.
Okay.
I wasn't part of that excavation as such.
I mean, I was part of it. I just don't know what I can say because I don't know where the show is going to take it.
Right. Okay.
And we understand that.
Yeah. And now here was an overview looking down on it. And again, like I said, that whole spot there in the uplands coming off from Smith's Cove was just fascinating to me, and finding that. And like I said before, I would have been in that bucket just like Rick. I wanted to get down there and put eyes on it. And that's one of the things that Rick says all the time, eyes and boots, get the boots on the ground and get a look at that. And I would have been in there in a heartbeat because I wanted to get a better look. When they did put the camera down there, I mean, it's obvious that there was some sort of a structure, a wood of a collapsed tunnel or something down there. And hopefully we'll get to find out more about that. But it does lead. And again, if I go back in those pictures, it does lead right to that. Because here they found it, and it looks like, maybe it was this tunnel right here that was, you guys actually hit that tunnel, if that tunnel exists. So it's all fascinating, but and again, Oak Island being Oak Island, we get a lot of questions and sometimes not as many answers as we'd like, unfortunately. So
we know that.
Yeah. Yeah, or things breaking down when they're not supposed to break down. That was and anyway, this season they talked quite a bit about Erin Helton coming out, or actually in the war room, and her giving some her idea of what happened, looking at some of the stones and Zena Halpern's map that she had found, stuffed in a book of all places. But this map, if the map is true, really did give some good points. And then of course Erin coming out and talking about that, and she gave you some points to look, and then you went out and actually found those rocks out there that she was taught. That I guess the and I forgot my numbering now, but she had numbers from 6A and stuff like that. So you were instrumental in finding those rocks this season.
Yeah, I mean, Erin and I worked a lot together, especially early on in the season.
Mm-hmm.
I believe her research was 1.5 to 2 years worth. So that was her theory wasn't just something she threw together overnight. It evolved, and it evolved through real science and real data too. So I worked with her a lot, and Doug worked with her a lot, and we did a lot of work. And I mean, she used data, so we would feed her LiDAR data, and but I would never feed her something to lead her down a path. So I would let her come up with her own theory, and I would either confirm or deny it. So as she confirmed certain parts of her theory, I would continue to feed her the positive data, or, maybe there was certain parts that didn't pan out, I would feed her that too. But I mean, Erin she's great at what she does. She's a data analyst, and surveyors in general work really well with data analysts, and ironically enough, archaeologists. So to go back to the field, surveyors and archaeologists work hand in hand. But I mean, Erin she's really good at her job. And so she essentially combined her world, which is data, and the theory world, which was Xena, and she came up with a very elaborate, and as Rick called it, a romantic theory. And, a lot of our season was based on her research. And a lot of the work that I did was driven based on Erin. So, I mean, she was great to work with. I mean, she was professional. Anytime I had a question, it was instant. Sometimes I'll send questions out, and it will be a day or two before I get back. Erin would have it within minutes. So we worked really well together, and it was fun working with her and being a part of that.
Yeah, she was very confident in her information, and we picked up on that right away watching the show. And we've asked her to come on with us at some point if she could, but she's graciously declined for now. And hopefully someday we can. But I know that it left off, looking at what she talked about on the show, and it kind of left off with, she had a point there. I guess it would have been on the on the west side of the Money Pit area. She came up with a point there to look for a shaft or some sort of down there. And again, and then the drill was sent down, and there was nothing found in that particular spot. And then so she was asked to give another coordinate in that same general area if she could come up with something else, and you guys would look. That's where we left off, and we haven't heard anything else. So hopefully we'll hear more about that. But very intrigued by the fact that she was leading this all back to, I guess it was Cone E, which is the last rock on the bottom of Nolan's Cross, being very key in all this. And that kind of goes back to some of us, and I being one of them, that cross on the island, that there's a purpose behind that cross on the island. Now, what it is yet, I guess, has not been proven what it was. But in one of the things I wanted to ask you, Stephen, about that cross is, we're always told on the show that the measurements between like the headstone in the center out to each arm on each end and down, all those match up. Those distances are exact. Is that pretty close to? Are they pretty close to being exact?
It's pretty close to making a perfect cross.
Okay.
So it really depends. The stones are so big. It depends when you're surveying it, what surveyor determines what the center of each stone is.
Right.
But I'll confirm that it's pretty close to perfect.
That's amazing. And so for them to have been, we're assuming that that was, set up. Nolan's Cross was actually set up sometime back in the early, 1400s or 1300s or what have you. And again, we don't have an actual date on that I know of. But that's amazing that they were able to do that and have that just so precise. And again, like I said, I'm one of those people that believe that Nolan's Cross, there is more to it. How do you guys feel about that? Is there anything you can say on that? Do you feel that there's something important about Nolan's Cross as well? Or is that a subject we got to stay away from?
I'm not a Nolan's Cross person. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
No, in that I don't know very much about it.
Oh, okay. All right. I was going to say, are you a believer in that? Okay. So.
Laird, I have a question for you.
Yep.
Since there's so much going on in the swamp, how much help has it been to have 3 more archaeologists there to help you out?
Right.
I mean, it seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger every episode right now.
Yeah, it was a great help. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's three other sets of eyes, 3 other people to ask questions, which is really important to us. So.
Yeah, I've actually had the opportunity to have Dr. Aaron Taylor on with us. He came on early back in December, I think it was. He came on, and I was able to talk to him a little bit about what he has done up to that point. We could talk about what he's done on the island, and then of course we have Liz and Miriam as well out there. And I think that's, in my opinion, that's fantastic, because you want everything documented as much as you can. And now you guys are becoming very busy. And I noticed that Stephen, you're kind of, you hang out with him quite a bit. Obviously you have to, but you're hanging out. Are you maybe becoming one of those dreaded archaeologists, part of that team? Are you?
Me?
Marty likes to call him the dreaded archaeologist.
I hang out with everybody. So Gary and I had a discussion in the island, and we're really designated into certain parts. We're certain groups, and oversees this group or this part, and it will be driven by Craig, and we all live in different worlds. Gary and I, and Laird would be the same. Laird gets called everywhere to look at everything, and we just sort of float between everything, because everything that's found, whether it be an archaeologist, now Laird knows how to survey a little bit, and actually really well. And so Laird does a little bit of his own surveying with our total station. But anything that's found, I come in, and I try to come in once a day or once every 2 days and survey everything that's been found. So everything that Gary finds, I survey. Everything that's found in the money pit gets recorded, and everything that's found by an archaeologist gets recorded in our database. So you'll see me everywhere, and that's just because I'm getting called in to survey what's been found by whoever found it.
All right.
I have to laugh. I mean, Laird, I have to laugh every time they call you over. It's no fun, Laird, or anything, because they find something that's very important, and also you come in and know it's not what you think it is or whatever. I mean,
Jack,
negative Niven.
That's Jack calls me negative Niven. Yeah,
negative Niven. That's great. Well, we had a picture. And I got to say, I'm gonna show this, but then I'm gonna qualify it a little bit too.
Oh, it's awful.
So there you are. You guys were working on the wash table, and you found that piece of leather, and obviously, and you qualified it by saying, "Hey, I'm not an archaeologist, but this looks like it's significant." So you did say that. So And then, of course, you know, as this went along, you had you were there. Oh, there's another picture of you checking it out. And then, of course, there comes.
There goes Laird.
Yeah.
Or as one of our members called him, COD, the Crusher of Dreams. But I gotta say that you're vindicated, Steve, because isn't this piece of leather found now kind of maybe possibly tie in with the leather from the heel? I mean, they were both taken to the bookbinding guy, and I've forgotten his name. I should remember that. But so is that? Go ahead.
I'll let Laird talk about that. So
Okay.
I actually found this piece of leather, and so he handed it to me, and I took a look, and I thought it was obviously a bookbinding, and I was pretty excited. And I can tell you that I get so excited that it went across the island, and everybody got pretty excited. So Laird was out there pretty quick, and you know, Laird said it looked like a piece of, if I remember, a boot or a glove.
A boot, I think. I think it's because it was thick.
Mm-hmm. And he said it looked like nice leather. And I remember him saying, if I remember correctly, it was old. And he didn't rule out it wasn't important. He just ruled out what I thought it was.
Right.
I think it turns out to be fairly significant in some sort that it was tied back to all the other leather. But I don't know how much I can talk about that because I don't know what they've aired on it. And
yeah.
But, you know, I did say, I was like, well, I got really excited there, and there's cameras on you, and sometimes you forget there's cameras on you. And I was like, well, I better say that I'm not an archaeologist because I'm not. And maybe all there because maybe it's not what I think it is. So
right. Yeah, it's I know it's kind of the same way with the I guess it, and we still don't know the material yet, but I guess the brass knob, and that was funny because everybody was all excited about it, and of course we hear Gary, and Gary is so animated when he finds something, woo, you know, and he found that knob, and of course we didn't get to see, you know, it was on the promo for the season premiere, you know, oh, they found something gold, look at that, whatever. Everybody was speculating what it is, a locket or a watch or a, you know, pocket watch or something like that. Nobody, you know, but we hadn't seen the underside of it yet, with the hole in it. And so when that came along, and we finally saw the episode, and then everybody's still excited, you know, everybody's excited about it, and they're looking at it, and then overcomes Laird, and he's like, well, I hate to be the guy that busts everybody's balloons, or I forget what you're.
I am always that guy.
Yeah. And or come over, now you're going to let everybody down. Yeah. And but then when you turned it over and you saw that, I guess I'm assuming that what you saw was the metal. It wasn't something that was added on top, but the metal was all the same color, where you could see where it was broken out. Once you turned it over, you go, oh, now this is more.
Oh yeah.
When you flipped it over, you said something about it being more significant when you flipped it over and saw that the metal. I was assuming that's what you were talking about. Now we still don't know exactly what that's. They haven't had it, you know, we haven't seen on the show yet that it's actually been tested to tell us exactly what it is or anything. And hopefully it's not one of those pieces that just falls away into oblivion and we never find out anything more about it. We've been going about a little over an hour and a quarter now, and I think it's time that we jump into a few more of the member questions. And we had quite a few that were submitted to us.
I just had one that came over. I'm kind of curious about.
Mhm.
When you guys are planning out your schedule, who plans out the schedule? Do you two get together with the rest of the group? How do you move forward? Let's put it that way.
With me, I have they asked me for a plan for the year. You know, what do we plan on doing?
Mhm.
And kind of work within that schedule. But then it's a moving target, right? Something will come up and all of a sudden I'll have to go to something else. You know, so I plan an outline and then it changes every day.
Mhm.
Because production, for the most part, controls our schedule during the day. Right. We learn what we're going to do when we get there in the morning.
Right. Okay. So that's what I was going to say. Is there like a meeting? Does everybody get together and have a meeting? Say, okay, today you guys are going to work on this and you guys are going to work on that. And is there like a planning thing in the first thing in the morning?
No, usually I get there and one of the assistants will tell me where I'm going to go.
Oh, okay. All right.
Steve's a little more deliberate. His because of the money pit, they have a much more solid plan. Right?
Yeah, mine's a little different. So first and foremost, I keep the money pit running. So the drill rig can't move unless I move it. And then, of course, when the drilling's done, you know what I talked about earlier, that that 3D survey has to be done. So the money pit is a very expensive project. The drill rig is a very expensive drill rig. And so I'm just sort of let loose. So if I can sneak into a war room, I get to sneak into a war room. If I can get called out to go help somebody else, whether it be Laird or another archaeologist or Craig or whomever, I have to make sure that it's not interrupting the progress in the money pit. So my first goal, and I'm told this and reminded this every day, is to keep that drill rig moving. So I don't really have a schedule. I just get in trouble if the drill rig stops.
So when you're called down to the swamp, it's come down, get your measurements, and you're going right back up to the money pit.
Essentially. And I can only do it if the drill rig's not down. So if the drill rig's coming to the end of a drill hole, I have to sit there and wait to move it, because it's so expensive to run that drill rig that it needs to move on to the next hole. So everything needs to be done. But then we need to, as soon as we're done drilling a hole, I have to collect the data, or somebody has to collect the data.
Right.
Has to run back to the research center. We have to plot it. We have to talk about it. And then we pick our next hole. It is literally picked in 20 minutes. So everything is done. And by 20 minutes, because it takes about 20 minutes for that drill rig to come out, I have to be back up there moving the rig. It happens seamless. We have it down to a science because we've been doing it for 2 or 3 seasons now. Mm-hmm. It happens like clockwork. It happens quick. It happens fast. But we know, we've got a good routine.
Right.
And but really, I'm one of the rare that I don't come in and I'm really told what to do. I just sort of float.
Yeah, and imagine your phone goes off quite a bit. Hey, get over here. We need you over here right away. So I imagine you're getting a lot of a text or calls throughout the day to come run over here. And you too, Laird. I would imagine that you get called around quite a bit to say, like when they called you over when they found that knob, they're calling, hey, get over here. But there's times when you might be on the opposite end of the island. And again, the ball property. We finally got to see. We've been waiting all season, many of us have, to see what's going on in the ball property. Now, all we saw was what was on last Tuesday's episode, which was you, and I believe it was Liz, I think, are working on the ball. You have 2 different little dig areas that you're working on. And, obviously we can't really talk about that too much. She did find that little piece of pottery that looked like, and I think you called it, I forgot the name of it, the glazing that was on it. A tortoise shell, some kind of, like, it was a little piece of pottery that was found. That was really the only thing that was shown, but you guys are working that area now, which is really cool. And that's, we are, again, I know that the Samuel Ball was significant on the island. I believe he had something to do with actually finding involved in the finding of the money pit to begin with, even though his name was taken off and then Smith was added on. I'm kind of a believer in that side of it, that he was involved. He was on the island when they found it. But with that said, now you're working that area, and I'm assuming that continues on more that we haven't seen yet. And I know you can't talk about that too much.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we're archaeologists and not treasure hunters. But there's some interesting things that come up this year that really convinced me that something larger happened around there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. That's good to know. That kind of puts us back on the edge of our seat, because again, many of us, and I did some research on Bull, and I really like that. And I'm hoping that we see a lot more evidence of things that were going on there. One thing that one of the members asked, this was Janet. Janet asked, what, and again, you have to kind of think about this in context, but what is your most exciting find on Oak Island? We'll go with Stephen first. What do you think is like the most exciting find that that's been on the island that we've seen so far? And I know that, again, we got to find that line right there of what's been shown.
That's tough. I'm going to say, I'm going to come up with something later, but off the top of my head, I'm going to say the 1706 wood from last year.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. See, that's key to me too. That's something we've talked about on the show. That's because that's very significant, that date.
That date and that piece of wood has driven 50% of our money pit program.
Wow.
Just based on that one hit. It is dictated and I'm just making that number up, but probably at least 50% of our drill holes are based on chasing that piece of wood and chasing more evidence of that. So,
right. Okay. Same thing for you, Laird. And they said, and the person here says, and don't pick what Stephen said.
I mean, I love the Ball property, but it's a series of small finds. So what really changed things for me was Smith's Cove and the U-shaped structure.
Ah, right.
I just keep going back to that and trying to figure out what it is and why it's there and who put it there.
Right.
You know, it's just a fascinating structure to me, and I'd love to see it recreated.
Yeah, that would be really, really cool. And I got to tell you, that you shared some pictures recently, with our group and with some of the other groups that were fantastic. I mean, these were, there's so much going on in the island that we don't see as viewers or fans of the show, but you sharing those pictures, I can't thank you enough for that.
Oh, yeah.
I know the members are the same way. That's so many good detailed pictures of things that we just didn't see before.
And see, we'd love to share things, immediately, because I see all the fans out there as a huge group that's going to solve any questions we have. If we put the evidence out there, we're going to get some great opinions and some answers from doing that. But unfortunately, with this show, I'm offsetting. Those pictures are 2 years old, so I'm safe.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Are you surprised what either one of you might have felt? The longer we go with this, the more the swamp, the money pit, the tarp, everything seems to be coming together. Where before it was just the money pit. It just seemed like the money pit and Smith's Cove were the two main things. What I'm saying is we're getting more and more of the island. What don't you think coming into play?
Yeah, it's broadening. The area of activity is certainly broadening. I'm not sure how much closer to answers we are, but
right, yeah.
I guess we have to keep asking questions to.
But are you surprised that all of a sudden it's gone from like a little circle? It's just kind of, it's like a wave going out. A wave going out.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of season 4, I thought, well, there's nothing else for them to do. This will be it. And the end of season 5, I thought, well, there's nothing else for them to find. So yes, I am surprised, and intrigued. It sucks you in, right, Steve? It really grabs you.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, Laird said, I mean, we still have lots of questions, but man, so much is starting to tie itself together, and the island is really coming together as a whole. And you'll see that play out this year, and you can see that play out really over the last year and a half or 2 years, where everything just starts to, all these 1700 dates. Let's talk about what you've seen, Smith's Cove and the Money Pit. There's a lot of early 1700s, and that seems to be a very common theme on the island at this point. So
and it seems like the 1500s are coming into play with the tar pits and everything else in that area right in there.
The pine tar kiln, yeah.
Pine tar kiln.
And that's another thing we talk about. So possibly there's not even possibly, I mean, they're hundreds of years apart. So there's different activities at different points in time that have happened on the island. And it's trying to figure out, okay, who was here in the 13, 14, 15, 16, 1700s, or no, who was here in the 13, 1400s, or even the 15, and who was here in the 1700s. And we really have record of who was here in the 1800s, but it's trying to figure out the U-shaped structure, the wood from the money pit from the 1700s. We pulled wood of the money pit mid 1740s, mid 1750s out of 2 caissons last year. And those dates are tied to the U-shaped structure. And what else? 1741. Slipway. Yep. So everything is really starting to tie itself together between the money pit and Smith's Cove. But who was that? Was it recovery? Was it deposit? And then you have these other dates floating around the island from Dr. Spooner, 13s, 14s, 1500s. And who's that?
Right. Yeah, that's the thing about looking at the getting back to the swamp. You've got the rock area that they found, road or paved area that they found last season. And they cleaned all that off, which was actually on the north side of Nolan's little peninsula that he has coming out there. So that was found last year. And then of course the excavation looking into the actual eye of the swamp, which I have this belief. I want to believe that the eye of the swamp is so much more significantly important. But again, Dr. Spooner, and I think Aaron Taylor was even there at the time, and they were looking at the fact, this is simply a blue clay area where they were mining blue clay. I'm like, that can't be all there is to it. Why did they have the rocks around it? But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's all it was. They were just mining blue clay out of there. But I want to believe that there's more to it than that. But they found that roadway there. Now they're working on this roadway they found, and it was actually named on the show just the other day. It is a roadway of some sort, and then it kind of turns and heads towards Nolan's Peninsula. And again, so we're thinking, does it go on underneath Nolan's Peninsula and continue on or not? And I know there was some digging over there. We seen the one episode where Rick actually took the bottle and got some of that water that was in there, and he got it in his mouth, and we all just cringed when we thought it. That's a little brackish, and I'm like, oh, how could you possibly do that? But again, Spooner had dated that. Dr. Spooner had dated that to about the 1220, that piece of wood that was in there in between the rocks. So who in the heck was over there doing something in that early on? I mean, that's just amazing. And this roadway, I haven't seen it dated yet. Nobody's really said anything down in the southeast corner of the swamp. We have not on the show yet seen any dates of that yet. I'm hoping that comes, but we know that you went out there, Steve, with your GPS unit, and you were able to actually say that over there where the archaeologists, you guys were digging over there, cleaning off the top of that, was about the same height as the rocks that were being found closer towards Nolan's Peninsula. I think it was the same elevation, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
So that ties them together.
The thing that I find amazing, maybe Laird, you can speak on this. I find it amazing that those roads are that wide, that long, and it had to take a lot of people a lot of time during that whatever time period that was.
Yeah, I mean it's carefully constructed. It's not just having rocks thrown in. Steve pointed out. Well, you tell them when you first saw it, what you thought it was, or can you?
You tell them, because I forget.
Because it has the larger rocks on the one side.
Oh, right, yeah. I don't know if I can say that, but let's wait and see how it plays out. We'll do a follow up of what's here at the end of the season.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. We were going to ask you if you could do that. So
yeah, I looked at that. Laird and I got called out, I think, together the very first time, and I said, you know what this looks like? I'm a surveyor. I survey lots of roads. This is what this looks like. It looks like a road, and it looks like this, but I can't say it yet.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Sounds good. We'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Laird, with the Serpent Mound, did you think it was a Serpent Mound the first time you saw it?
No.
No. Okay.
I know you guys were standing on top of it. Were you pretty convinced it was just a spoils pile?
I was.
Yeah, I was looking at all those boulders there, knowing that it was just back from Boulderless Beach. And I kept thinking, well, maybe they're boulders from the Boulderless Beach, and they were bringing them up here for some reason. But again, we don't know for sure, and we may never know exactly what that was all about, unfortunately. But it doesn't seem that it's all that significant. Gary did find that decking spike over there in that area that matched up with the decking spike that was found out of OC1, I think. So that the one of them had a little bit of like concrete on it. Yes. That Krista found, and that just fascinates me to no end, because people talk about the chapel shaft and being covered with concrete. So it's like, okay, we need more information on this. But she did find that concrete substance, and it dated obviously pretty old. So we're hoping to hear more about that as well. And this was from Paula. Paula Mason asked. She said, Laird and Steve, we're excited about the chance that we can have you guys answer some of our questions. Have either of you gotten to a point where you felt as if finding an answer to Oak Island was never going to happen? That you kind of lost faith in the fact that we're never going to be able to solve this? Have either of you ever been to that point? Laird, you can go first if you'd like on that.
Well, the end of season 4 and the end of season 5 and the end of season.
You mentioned that,
yeah. But no, I believe, the search is sincere. It's not contrived, and it would be going on without the show anyway.
Yeah.
And I would love to be part of the solution, mainly for Rick, I think. Yep. Rick and Greg and Jack just put their heart and soul is in this, right? And I'd really like it to be solved for them.
Yep. I would love to have been Saul for Dan too, and Fred. You know,
Mhm.
that would have been great. Yeah.
I
What about
have
you?
another question.
Oh, hold
They
up.
showed us a picture. Had a lot of orange flags going around now. Is that surveying, or I know Gary has put some flags out before, but he can't dig down, but he'll mark it before he moves on to his next city. There's a whole bunch of them in a row there.
Yeah, those aren't on the ball site.
I think this was in the swamp too.
And the swamp area. Yep.
Oh, flags in the swamp.
Yeah, there was little orange flags. I think those were actually flags that Gary was finding.
Maybe Gary
Yeah.
had found something and he was alone. He couldn't dig up.
Well, it would. Well, Steve can talk to that.
So it could be a mix between my flags and Gary flags.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Gary used flags. If it's something that Laird has to come in and confirm, you'll see some of Gary flags, or something that he wants to come back to. Something he needs to bring an archaeologist into, essentially. Gary will flag something. A lot of flags you see could be mine. I could be marking something out for somebody to dig. I'll often set something up, like we have a data set or something that says, we should look here. I'll throw that into our data set. I'll convert it to our coordinate system, and I'll take it out and I'll stake it out. So if you're seeing stakes and flags in the swamp, they might be mine.
But you also come in and you tag every Gary find as well. Right?
Oh, so a lot of times, yes. When Gary finds something, he puts on a flag what he finds, and I come in behind and survey it. Yeah. So that could be that as well. Mm-hmm. So he finds, say, the golden knob or the knob that he found, whatever it may be, that got everybody so excited, he will take a flag. So what you don't see is Peter Finetti or Jack or whoever's with him will take a flag, Alex, they'll write on it what he finds, sticks it in the ground, and I come in behind because I can't always come in because of the money pit. Now, right. Sometimes I do come in live when he finds it and survey it because it's quicker for me to do that. But a lot of times I can't do that. So I'll come in behind and I'll just record all of Gary finds. He'll say, Steve, I worked on lot 13 today or lot 15 today. Can you go and tag in, pin all of my finds? And I do.
I was going to give you that question also that Laird was talking about your most interesting find. What do you think?
What was the question, sorry?
It was about the most, let's see. Where was I at? Let's see. Oh, here it is. Have either of you, oh no, that was the wrong one. It was about the most interesting thing that you think has been found on the island.
Oh, we did that one. It was the one, something about the evidence found. So
have you lost hope ever?
No way. I think that hope.
We covered that. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Our hope is growing. I think because of what I just said a minute ago, that we're starting to be able to tie different time periods and different parts of the island together. Mm-hmm. Everybody's getting more excited. I think the fact that we're able to tie so much together now. I mean, there's a ton of questions. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's starting to come together, and you'll see that play out, I think, the rest of this year. That we're just, everybody's excited. I'll leave it at that. I can't give too much away because I need to leave you guys with some excitement. But I mean, let's go back to what we know. We know 1700 Smith's Cove and Money Pit, right? So,
we also had a viewer ask, I don't know if you can answer this, how far out was the shoreline like 500 years ago? Because I know they were out diving out there by the swamp, this year. Did they have an idea how far out the beach went? Because I know it does move up, viewer asked.
I know Steve has an idea. I know they're looking at getting a model, like a computer model generated for that, but it hasn't been done yet. But Steve knows this.
We have some data. We have some data set, and it's so high tide in our area increases about 1 foot per 100 years. So if you go back 400 or 500 years, you can push tide out about 5 feet. Mm-hmm. So based on just that, we are going to look into doing a proper data set on that. But just for generically, what we use is about 1 foot per 100 years. So every 100 years, tide moves in another foot. So.
Okay. Laird, this one was for you. This was from Ramona Gardner Green, and she was asking about evidence. Have you found any evidence that there was Native American, not Native American, obviously, sorry about that, about Native people that were on Oak Island or doing much with Oak Island?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
basically because I think Smith's Cove is so disturbed, the swamp's so disturbed. But there's no doubt it's almost inevitable. If we keep excavating, we will find evidence that they were there. I mean, it basically occupied the whole of the province, so there's no doubt they're on Oak Island. We just haven't found that evidence yet. We haven't been looking for it either.
Right. Yeah. So what you're just, you're finding whatever you find while you're working in a particular area, and whatever comes up there.
Yeah.
I guess there was a question also about a possible the pin that was found, and again, we have to be very careful because some of the stuff hasn't really been talked about, but they talked about that. We had the episode last week. It was called the Fellowship of the Ring Bolt. We found that ring bolt out there. And that hasn't been taken over to Carmen yet. I know several of the people have asked about that, but I don't know again how much that can be shared about that because they just found it last week. So it hasn't, like I said, it hasn't been looked at by Carmen yet. Or I'm assuming at some point. And I did talk to Carmen just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And he kind of indicated that, he smiled when it was brought.
A big grin on his face.
Yeah, there's more to be discovered there as well. But somebody, I guess they were asking about it possibly being a mooring bolt or something that would then put into a rock. And also that was another question that was brought up, that some of the rocks that were found out there, would any of them, in your opinion, have been used for ballast or any kind of is there any evidence of that at all, like a ballast stones or anything?
I haven't seen it. Usually, if the boat's coming from England, a lot of the things they put in for ballast were flint.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because it's a rock, it's heavy, it's not worth very much, but when you get it to the other side, it can be repurposed and used.
Right.
So we haven't seen anything like that. Yeah.
Does it seems like it's me, and I know if you were asked, there seems to be a lot more people on the island the last couple of years. The more that you've seen, the more people you've had to bring on to find things, to get things done.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, we've been using a lot of different experts over the years, which is great. I love to see it. I don't know, but the money pit.
Yeah, I mean, we're a normal construction site. I'm a surveyor. I work in every environment, and you do work for archaeologists, engineers, tradesmen, tradeswomen.
Mm-hmm.
We're no different. Our Oak Island it's all the same. We work with everybody. The bigger the group, it's almost the easier it is because it takes a little bit of weight or pressure off, and you get a little bit of help here. And I mean, you go back to my first year, and I was a little bit of everything, including Laird's assistant. And truth be told, I was too busy to be Laird's assistant. So
Terry was my assistant that year.
So it's the bigger the group, it just helps us get into our own little groups. It's back to what I said earlier. It's everybody now plays a part, and we're really designated to certain areas for the most part. And the bigger the group, the easier that becomes because everybody supports. And truth be told, for the most part, we all really get along. And as you can see, if anybody follows our Facebook groups or our social media, I mean, we put pictures up as of each other. So we're always going out together. So I think that aids in the fact that we all just get along.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing that one of the viewers said that is like everybody checks their ego at the causeway and just comes in and works together. And you can see it in the war, like your friends also. That it shows through, it comes through on the show.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely, it does. And Jack's exactly right on it. It does come through on the show very well that you guys work well together and that you become friends and you're all working together. And just like the name, the Fellowship of the Dig, that you guys are all invested in this, not only because this is your job right now currently, but also because you're working together as a team to get to answers that we all want to know, solve this mystery of who, what, why, when, and where, as Rick always says. That's very important to us to get down to that. And again, I kind of agree with Rick. What I love to see them come up with the treasure, some big treasure chest of gold or something like that. Yes, I think all of us would like that. But I think a lot of us would rather see, or not rather, but would like to see answers. Mm-hmm. Every time something happens, we maybe get an answer, but we get 3 more questions about what's going on. They talk about the anomaly in the swamp that's 200 foot long that look like it might be a ship. And and Fred's talking about that there was 2 islands and it was filled in the middle and there's a ship out there. Again, none of that's been proven, but we keep getting little pieces and bits, like that piece of metal that was dug up, that Gary found, that was taken to Carmen, and it turned out to be what he said was a piece of metal banding for a ship planking, and then it was tested and found out it was in a hot fire or something like that. So why was that there? We don't know, but yet it kind of leads to more questions. It's why was that out there?
It seems like Oak Island, for every answer you get, you get 5 more questions.
Yeah,
to come through.
We know.
Yeah.
How much have you used Christopher Sarah up at St. Mary's? She seems to be off and on the show. Maybe you go up there more than what we think you do.
They use her a lot. Yeah. I'm not sure. I think most metal artifacts that they want tested go to Krista. Yeah.
We had a question here. This is from again your number one fan, Deidre. She was asking about the money pit, and I guess this is for Steven. She said, "We know that the boreholes and the wells walk," and we kind of talked about this just a little bit ago. So her question was, when we are hearing the depth of the casing, are we getting the actual depth of the casing section, or are we getting the actual length of it? So
that's a question a friend of mine just asked me as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what are we dealing with there on that? Is when you're dealing with that walk or that.
So when you do the math on the triangle of the walk, it's very little. So let's say we're 150 feet deep. The casing's 150 feet. We've used 150 feet of casing. So that's the depth you're getting. The walk, it might be 149.6 or something like that. It's so little that we just go by the depth of the casing.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because at that point in time, we don't know the walk.
Right. And I was, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, and maybe it's something that we can't really talk about, but, I heard them talk at one point, and this was just an episode or so ago, talking about that walk. I assumed it was. They were talking about putting a gyroscope or something down the pipe. Is that how you figure out that walk?
Did they say that on the show?
Yes, they did. Or I heard.
Yes. So yeah. If it's aired, that's what we use.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because it was said. Yeah. It was brief. They didn't really explain it. And I heard that and I thought, well, how is that me? And I thought to myself, well, maybe that's how they're determining that it's moving over, because again, and I know you got some pictures of maps there you can share if you'd like, but again, it's that particular walk. I didn't realize it was so much. I really didn't. So if you're drilling where you think, okay, we think it's right here, but then you find out that walk could be 3 feet away at the bottom.
Yeah, I calculated that the average walk is 2 to 3 feet, which isn't too bad, actually. If you think about it, 2 to 3 feet over 200 feet isn't a whole lot. We've had previous years, because I have the data, we've had walks 20 feet. It's not with Mike and Choice, Sonic Drilling and Choice. But 2 to 3 feet is pretty, we know that with Mike, he's our driller on the rig, and we know that he's going to give us 2 to 3 feet on average, and that's really good. So we've got no complaints on what Mike does.
All right.
I have a question about how much has the solution channel been a problem for you? We'll put it that way, because I'm thinking of Rick's tuning and how much it moves.
Marty's tuning, yeah.
And Marty's tuning. And has that affected what your thinking has been when you're drilling or anything?
It doesn't affect the drilling. We get information from each drill, and we know when we're inside. We can help. We've defined the solution channel pretty well off of the drilling, but it doesn't affect us at all. It's you're either in the solution channel or you're out of it, and it doesn't really play a role either way. We don't usually base our drill holes around that, if that makes sense.
Could you explain that solution channel just a little bit briefly for maybe anybody who doesn't really understand what it is?
Okay, so the solution channel is almost what Terry would call a moving feature, or moving. It's almost like a mud lake, or this little lake, it's just a moving feature of water and mud in the. And you saw earlier in the season, we based our drilling around that. And early in the season, it showed the progression of that. And if we're right, and we think we are, if there's something down there, it could have possibly pushed it. So the goal of defining the solution channel is define the depths, the deepest portion, the movement, where it's pushing, and that helps to define where we need to drill. So the solution channel is essentially this, but you can picture this just mud lake that is moving under the money pit, and it's just pushing everything. And how is it created? We don't know. Was it created because of the flood tunnel systems?
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really know how it was created. We just know it's there. And there's multiple theories of what it is and what it may be, but we know it's there. It exists. We have the data to support it, and it plays a huge role in where the treasure could be. So, because if it is moving, you go back to season 7 where the toonie moved 10 feet, right?
Right.
Another. So we know it exists. We've got proof that it exists. We know what it does. And it's just, we've got it defined. And drilling this season, what you guys have now seen was based around defining the solution channel because it's so important to the search.
Okay. So I have another viewer question. How do you deal with the mosquitoes and the smell? I mean, I think Laird may have to answer that one from the swamp more than anything else.
I actually don't remember the mosquitoes being too bad this year.
Yeah, you had a pretty dry summer from what I heard, and that's why you were able to keep working in the swamp so much.
Yeah.
I think it was a pretty dry summer.
I don't remember mosquitoes in the swamp at all.
Really?
Maybe you do, Steve.
No, I hate mosquitoes. I load up on bug spray.
It's true. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, I spray down. I mean, Laird, they make me leave the research center. I'll soak myself in the morning with bug spray. I spray everything. I hate.
So they haven't really been a problem.
Yeah. Well, and again, mosquitoes, and myself being from the UP of Michigan, I am familiar with lots of. Matter of fact, they said I used to have a T-shirt that said our state bird was a big mosquito, a big giant mosquito. And the wetter the season, the wetter the summer, the more mosquitoes you have, the drier, the less you have. And you guys did have quite a bit of a dry season this year, which again benefited quite a bit. And that goes along too with the fact that, they talked about the shortened season. And again, I hope we're not running into this. We're going to start wrapping up here. We're getting close to 2 hours, and I like to wrap up about 2 hours. But we had a bit of a shortened season this year because of COVID. When I say this year, what we're watching right now, because of COVID, we had a shortened season. Most people weren't, the Lagunas didn't get out there until what we assumed to be somewhere around in June to begin things. And that delayed, they were talking about doing the big dig. And many of us wanted to see this big dig happen. Unfortunately, because of time and everything else, that's not going to happen or didn't happen this season, maybe in future seasons. But it did allow you guys to then focus on other things, ball property, the swamp that we may never have known about until Dr. Spooner was able to go there and spend time. So this allowed you to explore these other areas, which was fantastic. And now we have more answers, but more questions. There was also the wooden structure that was found in the southeast corner of the swamp that they saw, but then we never heard anything more. Everything went to the road. So I'm hoping that we get back to that wooden structure at some point and talk about that a little bit too. I'm again, I know this is nothing you guys can talk about, but I'm really hoping that we can get back to that at some point, over this the course of this season or next season. I'm hoping again. What's the thing going on with COVID there now? Are you guys under a lockdown again? The country being locked down from us coming over from the U.S. or
we are, yeah.
So chances are, if things don't change here pretty soon, we may be right back in the same predicament we were last year. Do you think?
I think, things may change because of the vaccines now.
Mm-hmm. True. Right.
But right now we have 7 total cases of COVID, I think.
We had a couple today, Laird. I think we're up to 10 or something.
Yeah. So we're pretty good. And those cases are all related, right? They're all travel related cases, and then people related to those people who traveled. So knock on wood, but I mean, Nova Scotians aren't in any hurry to have it come back. So
yeah, I know.
We just actually shut our borders off to Newfoundland. It was the last thing. We had a bit of an open agreement with Newfoundland. Yeah. And this couple days ago, we shut that down because they had a big spike. So we're running it pretty good here in Nova Scotia, and we have been since the start. And I don't think we've ever seen our number over 100 cases.
No, it reached about 35, and everybody freaked out, and then we just shut everything down.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly.
I know down here in the States, if it was 35, so they'd be jumping for joy almost.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's we're certainly hoping that you guys can get going. I know that here we are still in February, so nothing's really happening yet. But here, I don't know when things usually get started up in around in April, where people start April, May, start getting back to the island and getting things. Well, we certainly hope that it gets going this year. On a fun side of Oak Island, again, we talked about our good friends Dustin and Deidre White with their site of the Could It Be Oak Island. And I gotta share that you guys have obviously about this already, but we like the trading cards that they have, and they've been giving away as their prizes on their trivia show and stuff like that. It's fantastic. So we got Laird Niven and the Flood Tunnels of Doom, and then the Royal Cartographer Sir Stephen Guptill. I mean, this is really fun, and what they do is so cool. We really appreciate them a lot. So, I mean, were you guys pretty surprised when you became trading cards on trading cards? Have you seen these before, Laird?
We have them. I didn't expect it. Something I saw coming up in my life.
Yeah, they do make it a lot of fun. Yeah, we really Guppy. Yeah, she's talking about Guppy. Yeah. So, but it is a lot of fun, and we do find that to be quite a bit of interesting stuff that they do. And then, of course, there was this one here, and I was a little curious what this one was all about. About herding cats or something. I don't.
Oh, Scott! What is Scott saying is we're like herding cats on the island.
Well, I just noticed all the cats in the background there.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cats all around. Yeah, they just kind of follow Stephen around the island, I guess.
Laird actually took that picture, and that was Scott calling me. So that's a real picture, and then it just got sort of photoshopped and turned into a meme by a bunch of different people. But that was a real picture. Laird and I were working together on a particular site, and Scott was calling me, and he wanted me to go to the money pit because to do what I need to do in the money pit. So.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Steve gets to talk to Scott a lot.
The what? Say that again.
Steve gets to talk to Scott a lot.
Well, not only that, Steve does get to talk to Scott a lot, but also, I mean, there's this one here about the Amazing Race.
I think, you know what? I think Scott and I would do well in the Amazing Race.
Oh, really? You probably would. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So, yeah, this is just fun stuff. We really, like to.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we know that you guys are having a good time out there on the island, and we get to have a good time with you. And that's the thing about it. The show has been very successful.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you. Are you surprised that your show is that successful? I mean, when you look at the ratings for the show and everything else, I mean, when you first started, did you have any idea at all that this could become a phenomenon?
I certainly didn't. No. I underestimated the depth of interest in Oak Island from around the world, for sure.
Yeah, you guys are world famous now. You're a world famous archaeologist, and Steve, you're a world famous. I forgot that. What's the actual term? Geometrics?
Surveyor.
Surveyor. Okay, all right, we go surveyor. But you guys are world famous now. I mean, we have members in our group that are all over the world, and that's just fantastic to us that we have so many. Tara just jumped in and said, "Tell Scott happy birthday for us."
Right.
Yeah, Scott Earl's birthday. Everybody should wish Scott happy birthday.
Today was his birthday. One more thing that I wanted to show here real quick, and Laird, you and I talked about this at the very beginning. One of our good friends to the group, and I have had the pleasure to talk to in a setting is Corian Mole. And also his partner in crime that he works with, Christopher Morford. But there's a video that you sent me, and I'm gonna show it here real quick.
Can I give a little background?
Yes, please go right ahead.
I went to the Netherlands in 1995 for the 50th anniversary of the end of the war, and on that trip, because my father was a veteran, but he had died. But I met a young guy. Gordon Slater, whose father was killed during the war, and he was there with his mother because his father had been missing for some time, and they just wanted to know how he died and things like that. And he didn't get to meet his mother. So December 26th, Corian sent me a message and asked if they commemorate in the Netherlands. They commemorate all of the graves of the war dead. particularly Canadians. So he wanted to know if there was a grave I wanted him to light a candle on. And so the grave I picked was Major Gordon Slater, who died in October 1944, and very close to where Corian lives.
Yeah. And here's the video here showing him at that site there. And he's lighting the candle for it.
It just goes to show you that this is more than just a treasure hunt, right?
Yep. Yeah, R.G. Slater.
Yeah. Robert Gordon Slater.
Major, yeah. That's really neat. And we go ahead. Sorry. But again, yeah, Corian has become a good friend of the show. And the music that I played at the very beginning when the countdown was going on was music that he has shared with us. I'm going to be doing that on quite a few of our shows now. I'm going to be playing different songs of his. Just a fantastic, not only is just a great guy, but he also is such a talented person in so many different areas. And he's become, like I said, he's become a very good friend of the show and of us, and we really appreciate everything that he's doing. And yeah, I see a lot of the chat is coming in right now talking about so honorable, and somebody even said something about making them cry. It is a very, very touching moment, and obviously for him to step up for that, that's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, and that, you guys have become, you've met so many of the different people that you've touched, over the years that you've been on the island, both of you. You've got to meet, and I've had the pleasure, quite honestly, I've had the pleasure to meet so many wonderful people connected with this. But it's kind of neat because you can all stay in touch with each other and do things like this, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, the opportunity that you've had to meet so many people and that are not only, like you said, not in some ways not even connected with the treasure hunt, but things like this. It's just it just means so much. It really does.
It's amazing.
Yep, it sure is. Guys, this has been fantastic. And I know that there was so much that we'd love to cover again down the road here. This is one of those fine lines that you say that right now is the time where you guys have time to be on a show, but you can't really talk about too much. That's why I was kind of waiting. I was kind of pushing it down here that when we could have you on, because that way there's more you could discuss. We really hope, and I know that once you guys are on the island and filming is happening and you're there from dusk to dawn every single day, or dawn to dusk, I should say, and doing your thing out there, you don't have a lot of time. But boy, I tell you, if we could get you guys to come back at some point,
we would love to.
That you could cover more of what's happened on season 8. I know we got several more I don't know what the count is, but we have several more episodes to go this year. And we know there's more that you could talk about. We'd love to have you come back at some point and be able to, share more with us if you could. We'd love to have you, and I hope that that's something you would be willing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because again, we have our members in this group is just taken off. We've got a lot of fantastic people, and this group here has been one of the groups that we share so much stuff. So many people are so much more knowledgeable about the island than I am. I'll throw a question out there and we'll have 5 different people answering it for me. So it's just been such a pleasure to do this. And I thank the members every day or every time I'm on for
yes.
And we certainly thank you guys for coming on here and sharing your knowledge with us. It's been just wonderful. I hope that we treated you well and you've had a good time here with us today.
Oh yeah, it's been our pleasure, and we both acknowledge that we're not in this position without fans, right? Mm-hmm. So we like to thank them for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you very much. We're just at the 2-hour mark, so we got to call it. But again, thank you so much. Thank you, members, for being here. You've heard them say that they would love to come back, so we certainly want that to happen.
We certainly hope so.
We can't thank you enough. And anybody else that you don't mind telling them, hey, because we've reached out to some others, and I know some others can't come on, and that's okay. We understand that. Or have graciously declined to come on, and that's okay. We completely understand. We understand the NDAs that you're under. But if you know of anybody else that would like to come on and share stuff with us, we'd love to have them. But again, thank you so much, Jack. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Work out there in a group, and members, thank you guys so much for participating with us today. We love you guys, and we just want to be able to give you more good content coming down the road. So, going to sign off and say goodbye. Thank you very much.
All right.
Guys, hang around for a second. We'll talk to you here in just a moment. But hey, everybody have a great day and stay safe. All right.